Sorry, guys, I lost you guys. Let's do this again. My name is Anthony Ganji, host of Tier Talk, only show dedicated to law enforcement. Don't forget, guys, follow us multiple venues: iHeartRadio, TuneIn, YouTube, Spreaker.com, Player FM, Stitcher Radio. The list goes on and on and on. And don't forget, guys, follow us on Facebook live stream. We have a page on Facebook called Tier Talk. We're up to about 23,000 followers. It's a great page. We try to keep the page going. We go live from that page every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we discuss topics that are current in law enforcement. And also, guys, I do have an app. All the shows we do are available on an app called Tier Talk. You can download it for free on iOS and also on Android. Okay, guys, just want to make this real quick. I kind of lost you guys for a second, but I have a thought and I just want to get it out. Okay, so right now we know that corrections has evolved, correct? And there are a lot of changes. And hey, what's up, Ronnie? There are a lot of changes that corrections is going through based on that evolution and where we're headed. And a lot of the changes are attacking the old practices that we use that have worked for years. So what I've been looking at is, are they attacking the practice, or are they attacking how we carry out that practice? Okay, so that's the key. So if you look at it right now, and I was talking about the death penalty before, and I was also talking about restrictive housing. It's not so much, I think we would have to admit that we definitely need these practices. And just to explain why, let's talk about the death penalty for a second. We need deterrence, right? Anybody that attacks a first responder, especially if they kill the first responder in the performance of their duties, there has to be a severe penalty for that, because you have to protect the protector so they can do their job correctly. Remember, that's the one thing that the protector expects from the public. It's to be protected. And all we ask is to sign laws in place that help that. You know, you attack a first responder when they're trying to save a life or when they're working behind a wall, there needs to be zero tolerance for that, and there needs to be punishment that can deter others. Okay, that has to be zero tolerance, or you're going to wind up getting first responders who are hesitant. Not because they're afraid to go on the scene. It's not about that. It's about the fact that, will they be protected? You know, and we rely on lawmakers for that. Okay, that's one aspect. And then we talked about restrictive housing. We talked about, you know, you need a spot to remove inmates that are a threat so we can continue to rehabilitate with that threat removed. That's the key. Okay, and you need that. If an inmate does something wrong, there has to be discipline in place, so the inmate will think twice, or other inmates will think twice before doing something foolish like that. And those are key. Okay, those are key. We need that. Okay, but here's what happens here. Okay, and I noticed this, and I just want to get this thought out there. People that challenge these practices, they don't necessarily challenge the practice in a general manner. They challenge the practice related to a specific extreme that may have happened in another local jail or another local prison, that they wind up trying to use as a way to generalize how we carry out that practice on a national level. So let me just give you an example, okay, so I can get my thought. Let's say there's a case in Florida, hypothetically, I don't know, it didn't happen, but just hypothetically, where there's an inmate in solitary confinement who's been by himself in the dark, pissing in a bucket, and no one to talk to, whatever, which is not happening. But let's just say somehow or another it has happened. This will leak out to the public, and the public will think that this is the norm, that this is the practice at all facilities. So when they go to make changes to that practice, they change it based on a specific extreme that really doesn't relate or define how we commit our practices in other states or in other facilities. So when you think about it, they're changes that they want to implement. They're not changes. They've already existed. They're just taking this specific extreme as a way to kind of politically maneuver, like they're like they really know what's going on, or just to kind of just say, okay, we're making these changes because this is what's going on a national level. And that's really not the case. They just kind of took one incident and generalized it across the board, okay? Because that's what they mostly do. And don't forget, guys, the public, they don't know. They don't know. And that's our fault. Because when something like that happens, we should contest it immediately and remind them of the truth, okay? And we talked about the death penalty as well, the mishaps that have been happening. Yes, there have been mishaps, okay? But again, it's the due process or the method that seems to be an issue. But no one's challenging the fact that, they need to exist. They're challenging the practice of it. And that's how they wind up winning their argument. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to make sure that when we employ these practices, that we employ them within the means that are governed by the state and local laws, okay, and also follow standards for human decency. And we have to, because that's the only way that we can justify these practices existing. Because as I said, if I wanted to defend restrictive housing, or what some would call solitary confinement, which is definitely not the case, they're not alone most of the time, or administrative segregation, I would defend it based on what they're being given. Wait a second, you want to talk that they're not? Let me tell you something. They get more programs. They get all their health needs met, whether it's mental or medical. They get education. They get ways to do their time in a productive manner, even if they are in restrictive housing. Okay, and why do we move them from restrictive housing is because we have to maintain order and control. Okay, so we know that. But the thing is, I have to be able to justify the use of, let's say, restrictive housing by reminding those from the outside of the humane qualities that are there when dealing with restrictive housing, because that's what they're challenging, guys. And that's what we tend to be losing out on. So in order for us to justify the system, to justify our practices, we have to justify it in a way that reminds the public that your perspective is wrong, and that what these political people are telling you is wrong. Again, let's even talk about PREA first for just a second. PREA, when it came back out in 2011 or 2012, it made it look like that all we did all day was allow sexual assaults. That's what it made it look like. And that the people that are implementing PREA, they're pioneers, because they're going to come down with a zero tolerance on any form of sexual assault. Well, let me give you guys a wake-up call here. We never allowed sexual assaults. And we always had a zero tolerance for sexual assaults behind the wall. When PREA was put back out, it was to try to ensure confidentiality, a pipeline, so more inmates would come out and admit that they've been assaulted, so we can go ahead and correct the situation. But political people took advantage of it, and instead of them telling them that these were the practices prior, we're just trying to make it run more efficient, they made it look like we weren't doing nothing, that we just sat idle and let inmates get assaulted. Same thing's happening with the changes that we have with restrictive housing, or any type of changes that we're facing towards discipline by now. But what they're not telling everybody is that the changes that are being made, they're not changes. They've existed. You're just kind of taking the extreme, generalizing it out as if we do nothing, instead of looking at most of the other facilities and saying, wow, they actually do implement that. So you're kind of making it look like that you're this hero implementing these practices as if you're the pioneer behind it, and you're not. These practices have always existed. And when you release it out to the public gets misinformed, because the public thinks that this is the first time that these practices are being implemented. Like, okay, well, I'm going to redefine restrictive housing. I'm going to make sure they get their needs met, both mental health, physical, education, make sure they're programmed. What do you mean make sure? We've always been doing that. We've always been doing that. You went on an extreme situation, you're automatically assuming that we don't do that on a national level, and that's not true. You went on one specific extreme and you used that as a way to generalize who we are on a national level. Now, the problem is, when the public gets word of this, the public wants to just get rid of it now. Oh, no, that's bad. Let's get rid of it, because, again, they went on one extreme, one specific situation. They didn't bother looking to the left or right to see how other facilities practice. Okay, so what the public's quick to do is to make that assumption, generalize it out on a national level, and next thing you know, the changes that are being implemented, or that they think are being implemented, already existed. You just have one political person or one politician putting their name on practices that already existed. But the problem is also when they try to tweak something when they try to kind of touch it up a little bit, they don't realize that they're touching it up from an extreme. And that messes us up, who is actually doing it the way it's supposed to be done. So just to kind of close my argument here, and just to get the point across, just to kind of, before anybody, just to get my point across real quick, is that right now, the changes that are affecting us the most, I even think you see it on the streets as well, are